Hello, everyone. It's great to see everyone. Great to have my team here with me. Great to have the snow that we're having in the region. Just to introduce myself quickly, my boss is over here directing me. Being Patoni Nishlin, Nakai Bushes Chin, Sinajini Dashache, Ado Nakai Dashanella, Kintana Ke Hashche, when I'm able to. And I'm here with our Water Rights Unit team, and we're going to present today on our nation's Arizona water rights. So I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to Michelle. And so here you go, Michelle.
Thank you, AG. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle Brown-Yazzie. On my father's side, I'm Salish Kootenai and Ogallala Lakota, and I'm originally from the Torreon chapter in Eastern Agency, and I am the Assistant Attorney General for the Water Rights Unit. Very glad to be here this afternoon to talk about the Arizona water rights activities. Also with us today are the attorneys from the Water Rights Unit, Dwight Witherspoon and Max Dent, and I will have them introduce themselves. Let's go ahead and start with Dwight. Oh, you're on mute, Dwight.
Welcome to everyone that's joined us today. She Dwight Witherspoon Yenishet, Dolly Denet, Hutchini Nishle, Base But Ahnie Bashes Chin, But Ahnie Dashache, and Scottish A Dashanilla.
Yat A. MacArthur Lanakila Stant II. My clan is Senjikin, and I'm born for the Hawaiian people. And once again, it is wonderful to be with you to talk about the water rights of the nation.
Well, good afternoon. Really excited about being able to share information about the Navajo Nation's water rights in Arizona. If you look at the next slide, currently the Navajo Nation has no quantified decree rights to the upper basin, to the lower basin of the Colorado River, or the Little Colorado River in Arizona. On the right of the slide, we can see that we have three sources potentially for surface water. In the upper basin, there's 50,000 acre feet that's available in Arizona to be allocated or decreed. And these are considered federally managed water. In the lower basin, the state of Arizona has been allocated 2.8 million acre feet for the state of Arizona. And this also includes the water for the tribes in Arizona. And again, this water is managed federally. The Secretary of the Interior has a reservation of 164,642 acre feet that was reserved to be able to settle water rights, and this was done in September of 1968. Right now, the amount left to be able to settle the lower basin water rights with tribes is really not known. Now, the Little Colorado River is something that's interesting. It's state-managed water, and it's treated differently. It's treated as Arizona water, and is not considered in the accounting of the Colorado River water. We also have major sources of groundwater on the reservation in Arizona. There's the Navajo Aquifer, there's the Coconino Aquifer. Certainly there's alluvial waters around the streams and washes. There's springs, and there are also additional aquifers. In looking at the map of the Colorado River, there's an upper basin, a lower basin, and the slide on the left has in green kind of the water for the upper basin. And you can see that it starts in Wyoming, and then it covers part of Colorado, Utah, a corner section in New Mexico, and a corner section in Arizona. That lower basin in the kind of yellowish color covers parts of New Mexico, almost all of Arizona, part of Utah, Nevada, and a part of California. The slide on the right has a little portion of the Little Colorado River Basin. So those are surface water sources for potential water rights claims that the nation can assert. I want to briefly talk about kind of the Colorado River. This slide basically talks about the supply, how much water has been coming into the Colorado River over the years in certainly the upper basin and lower basin. And this slide starts in 1919. It goes up to about 2008. And you can see over the time or decades, the water supply has been increasing or decreasing. And in the 80s, 90s, it was a higher average. But then since, it has been decreasing. That red line kind of shows the demand or water use kind of over a 10-year period. And then we project out into the future, certainly that water demand is going to increase. However, over the last several decades, the amount that's available in the river has been decreasing. There are two methods for obtaining water rights because of the McCarran Amendment, which outline that water rights are decreed in the respective state courts. Of course, that includes the state of Arizona. And this includes tribal water rights. So there are two methods for trying to obtain water rights. Through court litigation or adjudicated rights. And then there's versus settlement. In settlements, you also take those settlement agreements to the state court to recognize those decrees that were agreed upon in a settlement. Next. When you consider which one to try to obtain water rights, you look at the pros and cons of litigation versus settlement. In litigation, it's based on the law that has been established by a number of court cases. And one of those court cases indicates that the reservation of water for a reservation for a tribe should be based on minimal need. And so when a judge is looking at decreeing the quantity amount for a tribe, they're looking at identifying that quantity of water to be based on the minimal need. Now, a judge can decree a quantity of water from various sources, and this is called a paper decree because it gives you a paper right to a particular amount of water. There is no infrastructure that comes with funding that comes with that decree from the court. And it pertains to resources that are pertinent to the reservation, so are connected to the reservation. Some of the things that you consider in a settlement is you have certainty because you know exactly what you're going to agree to. In litigation, you're dependent upon the judge making that determination, and you're uncertain about what amount of quantity of water you might obtain. You have to prove that up. Wet water is something that you can obtain in a settlement agreement where you're given infrastructure dollars to be able to take your water right and actually deliver water through the infrastructure funding to communities. It provides certainly for tools for water management, and some of those tools involve authorization of water to divert and certainly move water between states and basins. We know the Navajo Nation is certainly in 4 different states, and certainly the Navajo Nation is in both the upper basin and in the lower basin. And so locating the points to be able to take water out of the river and move it to our communities across the Navajo Reservation, certainly in a settlement, you can get authorizations to take water from different states and basins and move it to other basins in a settlement agreement that is ratified by Congress. In a state court, the judge would not have the authority to be able to authorize, for example, the Navajo Nation to move water between states and between basins. And so there's a little bit of a difference in a settlement in that regards. I'm going to turn it over to Mac.
Thank you, Dwight. The information that Dwight shared has been very important because of the concept of Arizona water. And I'm just going to say similar things to what Dwight said, that for the Navajo Nation with the state of Arizona, the Colorado River is an amazing part of it, both that upper and lower basin of the Colorado River. And he's gone over that to a certain degree. Now, one of the things that I'm going to be referring to now, and for the next, I'd say 20 to 25 minutes of the presentation, what's going to be focused on is the lower Colorado River adjudication, that third portion of water dealing with the Navajo Nation. At this current moment, the Navajo Nation is engaged in what we refer to as a general stream adjudication. And one of the things that I thought was really important that Dwight mentioned is that he mentioned that the lower Colorado River, it's being managed and adjudicated on the state level. So this here is from the Arizona revised statutes, and just gives you the law of how this works. And this is specifically for the lower Colorado River. We're gonna show you some information about what portions of the Navajo Nation are affected by this adjudication. We'll give you some numbers and some details and some claims. Also during this part, we're also going to talk about the Hopi tribe, because the Hopi tribe are also located in the lower Colorado River basin. And because of that, they're involved with this overall Arizona state adjudication of the lower Colorado River. So in this next 20 to 25 minutes, we'll be breaking this down. We'll be talking about what's happened in court. And what I mean by that is the Hopi tribe, they have already had their court adjudication. They've already had their phases. They've already had certain aspects of this. And hopefully we'll take enough time to help you understand what this adjudication process means. But what also is very important is, and what Dwight has tried to emphasize, and it's important to remember, is that this is the litigation part, and there's another method, and it's that settlement part. So that's what we'll try to get into. And so first of all, for those who have been listening for the last couple of weeks, thanks again for coming. It's really inspirational to me to see the people who come, like Priscilla. It's good to see you again. I've noticed that you've come often, and I feel like we're beginning to know you and get personal with the members of the nation. So the point is that it's a long long process with water. As you can see on this particular slide, the first date that's mentioned is in the year 1978. And it tells you that someone made a claim. And these are things that begin these adjudication processes. I'm not going to read all the details of all of the events here, but here are some of the major processes, major events that we've had experience through this process to get us where we are. If you notice, it also mentions the Hopi tribe on these lines here. And the one thing I want you to notice is where we're at right now. In the year 2023, we, the Navajo Nation, have had our first phase of hearings. We're going to have 2 phases of hearings, and I will explain later on how that process is going to work. The final date is in the future. If you notice, it says the year 2027. And in that case is when the hearings begin. It does not mean that is the end of it. It just means that is the end of the hearings. And the process is still going to continue after that. I hope you understand that the point I'm trying to make is this is a very long process. This is one of the 2 methods that Dwight has mentioned. This is the first method. And so we're going to go through this part just for the lower Colorado River, because it is one of the 3 that we are mentioning today with Arizona and Navajo Nation. I just want to leave this up for a couple of seconds. I'm sure you're very familiar with this as members of the nation, but here are the chapters that are affected by the LCR adjudication, because these are the Navajo chapters that are in the LCR, Little Colorado Basin. So it is a very important adjudication. It is a very important water source for the Navajo Nation. My chapter is also on this list, and I've have a very personal connection with the Little Colorado throughout my life, as many of you have had as well. Moving on, just a couple of maps that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, but it's always good to see these visuals. It's always good to be able to connect this information. As you see in the lower left-hand corner, you see the 4 corner states. You see the area that in the blue, that the boundary of this, and it is the watershed of the Little Colorado Valley, and a lot of it deals with the nation. And as a lot of us know, when it comes to Little Colorado, it does extend in terms of Arizona. We know that it goes past I-40. We know that there are smaller northern Arizona towns like St. John's, Snowflake, Show Low, Holbrook, and Winslow. And if I left another town out, it wasn't intentional. It's just an example of how this affects a lot of northern Arizona, how it affects the Hopi tribe, the Navajo Nation, and non-Indian parties as well. Oh. And then specifically focused, that previous slide talked about the overall Little Colorado River Basin, and this focuses on, just like I showed you before, all the chapters. It shows and is focused on the native side, and that would be the Navajo Nation and then the Hopi tribe as well. Now for some more details about the Little Colorado adjudication. I'm going to let Dwight review the next 2 slides just for a little bit.
One of the things to consider in a court setting or an adjudication for water rights is the parties involved. And so you can see on this slide a list of 34 parties to the Little Colorado River adjudication. One of the things that impacts the cost is certainly the amount of parties. And so when the Navajo Nation is making its claims, all the other parties have the opportunity to object to those claims. and say, we don't think it should be that high of amount. And here are the reasons why. And so not only is the time frame certainly very lengthy, it is also very costly. And as the nation is engaged in the Little Colorado River adjudication, the nation would still, through state court, have to assert claims to the lower Colorado River basin, also to the upper Colorado River basin. And certainly there would be objectors. And so that would be costly as well as lengthy. But this creates an idea of how many parties can object, and why potentially sometimes the adjudication process takes so long, as each party has an opportunity to raise their concerns and provides their objections to claims that entities assert. In the next slide, it lists those parties that are involved in a settlement. You can see here the Navajo Nation, the Hopi Tribe, the Department of Interior, the State of Arizona, the Arizona Department of Water Resources, the Land Department, Salt River Project, City of Flagstaff. And then a lot of that list on the previous slide is the LCR Coalition. However, the LCR Coalition is kind of mainly represented by a council, and you can see within these major 9 parties, the Navajo Nation has the opportunity to have a great amount of say in these negotiations. And the Navajo Nation has taken quite a bit of leadership in asserting settlement negotiations here with the other parties, setting up the meetings, the invites. We have engaged with individual parties with separate meetings. We're working on redrafts and certainly a lot of work, but the Navajo Nation is asserting its settlement rights and really trying to facilitate obtaining a settlement agreement with these parties. And I have to commend certainly our legal and technical team in our advocacy for the Navajo Nation. I really appreciate the opportunity to work with all those that are engaged in advocacy for the nations through this settlement process. But the nation is engaged in both processes. We're engaged in court settlement through the adjudication on the Little Colorado River. At the same time, we're seeking to obtain water rights through settlement negotiations at the same time. Back to you, Mac.
Thank you. So I noticed that Donovan Mitchell-Carr made a comment about little or lower, and that's I'm glad you asked that question. So in terms of lower, we're going to use the phrase lower basin Colorado River. And then when we use the word little, it's going to be for the Little Colorado River basin. So I appreciate that. And if we're not trying to confuse, and we'll try to be as clear as we can moving forward, because they sound very similar, but they are different water sources. So thank you, Donovan, and we'll do our best. As for what we're talking about now, we are talking about the lower Colorado. No, I just made the mistake there. I said I wasn't going to, and I just made that mistake. So Donovan, I can understand why it can be confusing. So let me try again. This adjudication is for the Little Colorado River, LCR, the Little Colorado River. And these, as Dwight has mentioned, are parties that are involved. One thing that he mentioned that I want to point out again is that the Navajo Nation has taken a very, I like to use the word proactive role, very proactive in the settlement discussions. As we moving forward, I'm going to mention a couple of times starting now, special master. And I'll explain a little bit more on that. But what we haven't noticed in the settlement, there is no special master involved with the settlement, but is very, very important for the adjudication. Okay, so as we can see on this slide, LCR, Little Colorado River. Okay, the Little Colorado River, it is for the state of Arizona. It's a court proceeding, and Dwight has mentioned that. So that's a really important thing to understand, that this is a state court proceeding. This deals with the Little Colorado River, deals with in terms of the state, Apache County, Navajo County, and Coconino County. However, the court that the case is being heard in is the Maricopa County Superior Court. So it's being heard in the Phoenix metropolitan area, and we'll explain a little bit more about that. Even though the parties involved, the vast majority of the parties involved, are in northern Arizona, and the basic reason for that is in terms of how large this particular case is. The facilities are easier to be held in Maricopa County, in the Phoenix area. Okay. The last thing is what I've already mentioned before, is the special master. It's an odd name, right? Both Dwight and I have taught before, and this sounds like an interesting little title to give someone, special master. So in this case, it is not a judge. It is not a judge. And on that bullet there, it does say judge, but let's make sure that we understand that it's a unique thing. Okay, that the special master does preside over the court proceedings, which means, as I've told you before, the Hopi tribe, they have gone through this. They have completed their court proceeding for the LCR, the Little Colorado River adjudication. Their proceedings are completed. The Navajo Nation, I will say, we are in the middle of our turn in our proceedings, and the special master presides over this. Okay, so we have had the phase 1, and it started this summer, and it lasted for months. And we'll go over some of the details of what happened in phase 1 in the next couple of slides. But just the court proceedings for the testimonies lasted months. But that is not the only part of the adjudication process. Before the phases, you had a lot of pre-trial activities and motions and writings and hearings. And as I'll show you later on, after the testimony, there is still more to come, as well as the closing arguments. Now, I've said phase 1, there will be a phase 2 as well, and you'll be able to see more detail about that. But overall, this is trying to give you an idea of what this LCR, Little Colorado River adjudication, is about. Having a special master, being heard in the Maricopa County Superior Court as well. One thing that Dwight and I shared with you when we did the first of this series, which was about Indian water rights, is we mentioned the Gila 5 case that was from the Arizona Supreme Court. And the reason I'm bringing it up again is because this is a very important case for the LCR adjudication, because typically speaking, on a state level, the water rights are typically for irrigation. And there's also a sense of what we call priority, like who starts using the water first. And that doesn't really work well for Native tribes, because it's more than just irrigation, so much more. One of the phrases we've talked about this whole month of December has been permanent homeland. And for this LCR adjudication, both for the Hopi and for the Navajo, one important thing that must be understood as water users, as our Arizona water rights, is that this is our permanent homeland. It's for our permanent homeland. And that is different than typical state water rights. And because of that, it needs to be viewed in this manner, that the present and future needs for this permanent homeland are very important. Again, if you've been with us long enough, you might have heard me try to say this PIA I like, but protect practically irrigable acreage. It's really hard for me to say. It's a tongue twister, but that is, again, focused on the state rights and irrigation, which doesn't cover all of the needs of the nation in terms of the water that we want and need for a permanent homeland. Now, the very important thing is it's reservation by reservation. What we need for our homeland is different than what other people need for their homeland. Now, it's not just irrigation when it comes to this adjudication. And this slide gives you an idea of what this court, what this special master is supposed to consider in terms of the water that the nation needs from the LCR, the Little Colorado River. What needs to be thought about in the phase 1 and phase 2 of this adjudication that the nation will present in our argument to the special master is to remember the history of our tribe, our culture, and the land that we live in, as well as our economics and our projected future population, which is listed at the bottom. That's a very important thing and very unique. What will be the future population? I feel fortunate that I've had the chance to have an education and to return to the nation. And I believe there are a lot of other members who want to do the same in their life. But this is a very important factor, this present and future population. And we'll talk a little bit more about it as we go on through this presentation as well. But again, the reason why we have this slide is because the concept of it's not just about irrigation when it comes to the state of Arizona, considering through litigation what water the Navajo Nation should receive. And again, this is for the Little Colorado River. Now, again, this is unique. This sort of court proceeding is unique. And so I just want to make sure that we all feel comfortable with some important details about this. Again, what will be the future population of the Navajo Nation? This is so difficult to try and figure out. So difficult that when we showed you the slide of the various parties that are actively engaged in this adjudication, many of them had experts who have done a lot of work to try and guess and estimate and project. That is the legal word I should be using, is to project the population of the Navajo Nation. But this is such a hard thing to do, but it's an important thing to remember. Another term that might be somewhat new for a lot of you is that second one where it says gallons per capita per day. This refers to on an individual basis as how much water is used. Now, what needs to be remembered, and that what we, the nation, are trying to do and help the special master is at this moment, this isn't the infrastructure that the nation is aiming for. This isn't the infrastructure that the nation hopes to have in the future. The goal of leadership and of membership is to have water accessibility for all members and for all parts of the nation. As an attorney in the Water Rights Unit, I've had the distinct honor to listen to many of the members describing their water accessibility and their water needs, and to try and continue to work for those. So this is a very important thing, is how much water does a person use in a day? And at the moment, the members of the nation, we don't use much water on a daily basis, and it's because of the infrastructure. And this needs to be explained in great detail and in great testimony of the special master so they understand. Now, this is a difference is in litigation, which this is, we have to present testimony as a nation to try to prove and show this compared to settlement. And in settlement, it's much different because we're talking to the other representatives who, for the most part, are much more familiar with these areas, and they understand because their clients are also from Northern Arizona and are familiar with the nation, and so it's a different dynamic. But I will go back one more time and just say that this is a term that is used often in the adjudication: gallons per capita per day. So how much water does a person use for their daily life? And it's one that needs to be worked out, and experts work to figure that out. Hopefully this next one we're familiar with as well, acre feet per year, and hopefully you're getting familiar with hearing that. I'm disappointed a bit. I was going to put a picture right next to it to show you how much that is, but I'll just say a lot of times people will say that you take a football field and basically from the length of a football field and the width of a football field, if it was 1 foot of water, that's the equivalent of what's considered to be an acre foot per year. So just a general idea to help you out there. Finally, when it comes to adjudication, the special master, as I mentioned before, and what's important here is that the special master will give a recommendation to the courts as to how much water the nation should receive. Now, this is not a feature of settlement. This is not in settlement. But it is an important feature of an adjudication that there is a special master, and that is their responsibility, that they are at the hearings, and after all of the hearings and all of the testimony and the briefings, that the special master will give the state of Arizona a recommendation. It's a very interesting thing. So I'm just curious, and I'm going to see if Dwight wants to add anything about this concept right here. And if not, then we'll move on. But I'll see if Dwight has anything to say at the moment.
Well, I'll be talking a little bit about the special master's recommendation in relation to the Hopi tribe, who have completed their adjudication process, and the special master has made a recommendation. And so we'll talk a little bit more about the special master's recommendation in relations to the Hopi tribe. And the same person is being the special master for the Navajo Nation's adjudication on the Little Colorado River. And so we have an idea of how the special master may treat our claims in relation to the claims the Hopi tribe made, and what were the recommendations the special master made.
So that's a teaser that's coming up. So please, hopefully you'll enjoy that. I have to make one slight clarification that the Hopi in their LCR adjudication had a special master, but was a different person than our special master. So that's a very interesting dynamic that we can talk about later, but that the Hopi tribe and the Navajo Nation don't have the same special master. There's a special master that is for both, but it's not the same person for both, which is a very interesting dynamic to think about. Okay, thank you very much, Dwight. I appreciate that. So going for what we said, this is the Navajo Nation's adjudication of LCR, Little Colorado River. What we are trying to think about in the future, and our experts that we worked years with and to help us out, that in the year 2110, the Navajo Nation population within the LCR, Little Colorado River Basin, will be 340,000. And then in the year 2140, it's a long way away, but the idea is that population projection is 447,000 people up on the Navajo Nation. As I just mentioned to you, the gallons per capita per day is that members of the nation would use 178 gallons of water per day, okay, or would need that much, which would mean that for DCMI, domestic, municipal, commercial, and industrial water uses for an area, and for what we want from the LCR, would be 85,000 acre feet per year. So hopefully going over those terms are a bit helpful to you. The GPCD is more on an individual basis, while the DCMI is more for the global use of that area and for multiple uses and capacities. Moving on. Again, now I'm going to focus just on the phase 1 litigation. And the goals for this is we're focusing on the population, trying to present to the special master through testimony of the census and the future population of the nation, and that future population, this is the water they need for the life that we want in our permanent homeland. So what was discussed was past water uses, present water uses, and the future water uses of the nation. On the right-hand side, I'm not going to read all of that, but there are a few things that are highlighted. So please understand that in the phase 1, it's working toward the nation putting an argument to the special master of the amount of water that's required for what I've said before, for that permanent homeland that is our right, as well as having enough water. And then if you take a look at that second bullet, for thriving communities, this one I will read because it's important to know that this is what we want. Hospitals, schools, shopping centers, housing, community centers, roads, restaurants, and then other commercial development. But these are things that to help our lives better. So I probably look my age, but I wish I looked younger. It's fun for me because I've lived on the reservation and been associated with my entire life. And where I come from, it is hard for a lot of us. The services we have are limited at times. We all know that. But around Burnside, there's a new Lowell's grocery store, and when I saw that go up, and when I saw that there, and it made me happy because it made my life better. And I think this is the purpose of the water, is to make our lives better. And I remember taking my kids who only know of a Lowell's grocery store there, and I took them there and I showed it to them, and I said, "Isn't this exciting?" And they said, "Dad, it's just a grocery store." And I said, "Good. I'm glad that's how you see it." Because I remember when it was harder, when it was difficult, and that infrastructure is important to get water to the homes of the members. We all want this, right? We all want good quality water as well. And so this is what we're trying to litigate, as well as settle, the two methods that I've been talking about. A couple of things, and then we'll be done with this slide. So this idea of priority, it's a state thing, right? But this is in state court. And because it's a state court and it's a state thing, we have to be aware of that. And so we also have to present an argument as to the priority date. Like, when did we start to use this? For most, in native terms, we like to use time immemorial, meaning it's just always been understood that the nations and Native Americans have been using this water as long as we can remember. And so these are the goals of the litigation. And this is a very important part that is important. And then have people hear the voice that we have, and finding the witnesses that can do that. So in terms of phase 1, again, it's already happened. It happened this summer, and it happened from April all the way until August. It was long in terms of this part of the trial for the adjudication. And we had multiple. The number is we had more than 30 members of the nation who were able to be fact witnesses. We had the present president, Dr. Bu Nigrin, and we had the past president come in and testify as to what it meant for the nation in terms of population, in terms of water use. And then we had council delegates. We had chapter leaders come. We had the executive division, the executive branch of the Navajo Nation division directors. We had Navajo Nation academics who had studied these things, as well as people who were members of the nation who had left the reservation for a time and were returning because that's where they wanted to be. They wanted to be living on the nation. As well, we have experts. Again, the point of this was for the population and that future population, and then the water use, to show past, present, and future, that we as a nation have these goals for the water. It's not that we're just like, hey, give it to us. Like, we are planning. We know what we want to do, and this water is essential to have this happen. But anyway, those were the experts that we had. We had groundwater hydrologists. Remember, groundwater is water that's below. Dwight has mentioned aquifer as a very example. We have surface water, just like the rivers and the streams, water engineers, and then economists to talk about all of these different things, and demographic experts who talk about population and the census and how it will grow and what they see happening. Again, it was a lot of work and a lot of time, and it's difficult to do. And this is the first of 2 phases. And what I'll be doing is showing you a little bit more about how it's going to be moving up. So overall, though, just giving you as much comparison as possible, these are the things in terms of that will happen as results from litigation if we only have litigation. If we're only using litigation, this is what will be happening. Okay, so groundwater only for the DCMI, and I'll say it again because I'm sure that it's not easy for all of us to remember: domestic, commercial, municipal, and industrial. Limits on the N aquifer, which Dwight mentioned was Navajo, and the C aquifer, which is Coconino. Again, something that Dwight's already mentioned that we're going to mention again, that in litigation, this is what we call paper water, not wet water. And what that really means is lack of infrastructure. If the litigation is what's used to give us water for the Little Colorado River, the LCR, there's not going to be an appropriation from Congress about that. And then a few other things as well that we're talking about here. Okay. So, but these are the things, these are the results if our water rights come from litigation. This is what will happen. Okay. The last one is the one that is the hardest for me to think about, but is important and we must address, that the water awarded by the state court will not sustain 7 generations. So this, I'm only going to take a very short amount of time to talk about, but the next steps. The next step is for the phase 1, the testimony is finished, but that doesn't mean we're done with the whole phase 1. Right now, we're in the post-trial briefing process. And so in the month of November, all the parties filed their briefs, meaning a written statement to the special master explaining what their argument is and why they support that argument. And those arguments are, what are the future population of the Navajo Nation and how much water should the Navajo Nation get from the LCR, the Little Colorado River? In February, all the parties are able to send another set of briefs into the special master, the response to those initial briefs. Okay, Then there'll be final replies. And this is only from the United States and the Navajo Nation, because we are the claimants. We are the ones who are claiming this. The U.S. is our trustee, and that's why they're also allowed a brief. But only the Navajo Nation and the U.S. will be a final brief, which can review the responses as well. Then the end of this phase one will come with the closing arguments, which will happen in April of next year. Phase two, I'm not going to go over all that information, but you'll see that it is scheduled. That already started this year. July of this year, there were court actions taken to get ready for phase two. Then we have experts. We have what we call discovery, where we collect our evidence. Then there's still pretrial, and then there'll be still another trial. And if you notice, that trial won't begin until the year 2027. This is a long process. This litigation, this LCR adjudication is a very long process. And so again, this is just one method. Now, Dwight's mentioned two methods. And so that's a very important thing to remember. So with that, I'm going to shift it over back to Dwight.
Thank you, Mac. I alluded to the Hopi tribe having gone through their claims through the adjudication process and the special master making a recommendation for their Hopi decree. This slide indicates for the Hopi tribe's claims for domestic, commercial, municipal, and industrial use, they made a claim for 9,322 acre feet annually. The recommendation from the special master was for 3,069.3 acre feet annually, which is about a third of what they asserted as a claim. For the stock ponds, the special master treated them as the same amount that they asserted in claim. For the stock and wildlife, the Hopis asserted a claim for 1,123 acre feet annually. What they were recommended by the special master was 824 acre feet, which is about 2/3. Hopi made an assertion for CNS gardens of 9,471. The recommendation from the special master was 0. The Hopi tribe made a livestock value chain of operations for alfalfa fields of 12,215 acre feet. The special master's recommendation was 0. The Hopi tribe made a claim for a coal liquefaction plant of 20,600 acre feet annually. The special master recommended 0. The hybrid coal-fired solar generation plant was a claim for 6,500. The special master recommended less than half of that, 2,300. For Hopi's claims for recreational, the special master basically used their numbers and made that same recommendation. In terms of pasture canyon, the claim was for 317 acre feet. The special master's was 286. And then in White Ruins, the recommendation was the same as the claim. What's important about this is we get to see, based on special master's recommendation, based on those concepts that the state parties get to object to and experts provide testimony on, and certainly in the Navajo Nation's adjudication claim, we can anticipate that we have our recommended claims that we're providing all this testimony on, but the special master may again make a recommendation that may be much lower than what we are asserting as a claim. And that's one of the things that's important to see in this slide. What happened with Hopi's claims and certainly what was the recommended decree from the special master to the state court. Next slide. So the special master's recommendation regarding future population and the amount of population has a very direct connection with the amount of quantification of water rights you can obtain. So certainly the population by the amount of populations used per day has a great impact. And so Hopi used their experts to say in 2110 that the population would be 52,016. The special master agreed with the Flagstaff expert that the Hopi population in that timeline would be only 18,155. And so their claim is certainly greatly diminished because of the special master's recommendation on population would not be anywhere near the Hopi's expert in terms of population claim. In terms of water claims for the gallons per day that individuals use, Hopi asserted 90,000 acre feet. The special master recommended 29. Next slide. Again, we wanted to kind of convey the importance of the nation is engaged in both litigation, and our litigation is on the Little Colorado River Basin. And we're in phase 1, and we'll begin phase 2, and certainly a lot of that will occur in 2027. In settlement, we're engaged in trying to obtain a settlement with the parties at this time as well. And so the nation is engaged in both processes. We're only engaged in the Little Colorado River at this time. In litigation, we would have to, in the future, do the lower basin as well claims, as well as the upper basin claims. But we're engaged in the Little Colorado River Basin for claims in settlement or in litigation currently. We have some upcoming meetings that we want to provide information out to the public. We have New Mexico settlements that are going to be occurring. So we're looking at trying to obtain settlements in the Rio San Jose Basin, the Rio Puerco Basin, and we want to provide information to the communities that are impacted. So we'll be meeting in January on the 8th in Rama and Tuajale. And then we'll have a meeting that's scheduled on the 12th of January in Crown Point at Navajo Technical University from 1 to 4, and that's confirmed. In the future, we're looking at some Arizona settlement, public education meetings, and we're looking at certainly Fort Defiance, Ganado, Chinle, Pinon, Kanta, Tuba City, Delcon, Loop, and Rough Rock in the future. And so please keep in touch with us. We will provide as much notice as we can provide to invite everyone to these public education meetings. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Mac and Dwight. A very good presentation on what's happening in regards to the Navajo Nation's water rights in Arizona. We have received several comments and questions, and we'll go ahead and go through some of those now. I do want to say that we did receive quite a few comments and questions regarding wells and current issues dealing with those wells. They're in need of, maintenance, or people are being told that they're down, and so forth. So in regards to the wells, the contact that you would need to make is with NTUA, and or our Division of Natural Resources, Department of Water Resources. So the Navajo Department of Justice's Water Rights Unit, our responsibility here and protect water rights. And as explained by Dwight and Mac, we do that in several ways. One is through litigation, and another is through settlement. There are other types of efforts as well. So I just wanted to cover that part in terms of issues that people are having with wells. But in relation to our work, of course, we seek to secure our water rights so that we can. So that the nation would have water available to provide to the various communities on the Navajo Nation. So again, I want to thank Priscilla Bitsui for being a member of our audience through several of our presentations this past month. And I saw a question from Seaver Fields, and asking about on-site water retention, to ensure that the water that is within the Navajo Nation stays on the Navajo Nation. And he suggested that dams, barrier basins, and piping be utilized to do that effort. I don't know if Dwight or Mac, if you want to respond to that comment from Seaver Fields.
I can respond. I think we're very familiar with the different types of snow that we might receive, which is very beneficial because it allows for the moisture to seep into the earth. When we have female rain, which is soft and gentle and hopefully last over a long time, that will make the ground very muddy. And but often we get kind of the male rain, which hits and then is gone, and it runs and it doesn't absorb, and so it goes into the washes and then into down the river. So absolutely, we are in need of being able to capture, kind of the rain as it comes, so that we can use it over time. We also need to slow the water, absolutely, as slow as we can make it go through lots of different methods, gabions and other methods, to try to slow that water so that it's not creating erosion, it's absorbing and getting into the earth, to help the alluvial water tables, recharge of aquifers, and certainly for the benefit of wildlife, for livestock, for crops and gardens, and for trees and mountains, and for all of life. Absolutely.
Thank you, Dwight. And also, we do have our Department of Water Resources who may be addressing those issues through the work that they do as well. And so I'm going to go on to the next comment or question, but thank you again, Seaver, for that question. Let's see. Donovan Carr had asked if we were talking about Little Colorado or Lower Colorado, and I think Dwight answered that our adjudication is in regards to the Little Colorado River, and we also are dealing with Upper Colorado River Basin issues and Lower Colorado River Basin issues. I don't know if you wanted to add to that, Mac or Dwight, in regards to the question regarding Little or Lower.
So we can assert a claim to the upper basin water that's in the very corner of the northeast portion of the Arizona state boundaries, but it is within the Navajo reservation. There are certainly portions of the river that is directly a boundary on the lower basin for the nation as well. The Little Colorado Basin, is quite a bit of area as well, but we're only engaged in the litigation currently for the Little Colorado Basin. We're not engaged in litigation for claims in the Lower Colorado River or in the Upper Basin. And you can see how long it's taking to do just the Little Colorado River Basin adjudication, and the process that's going out to, certainly 2027 for the nation's phase 2. And it's costly, and you got lots of parties. And we're also engaged in trying to see if we can obtain settlement in Arizona for all three if possible. Thank you for the question.
Thanks. And that was from Donovan Carr. We have another question or comment from Seaver Fields. He asks about irrigation. Why can't the Navajo Nation use irrigation or include our dying forest and rangelands? And has it been quantified? Matt, do you want to answer that one, or Dwight? Or I can. So I guess I will. So in regards to our, I'll answer the last question first about quantification. So in Arizona, our water rights have not been quantified. That is something, as Dwight and Mac discussed through the presentation, that we are working on through both litigation and settlement efforts. And of course, our focus is on bringing water to our communities, including, for agricultural purposes. And so there's different ideas that our technical experts have brought to us, as well as, working with the U.S. and through the state as to what's the best idea to bring water to those areas in need of water on the Navajo Nation. And so one of them is looking at the Upper Basin and Colorado River water, and to bring to Navajo communities for domestic purposes, as well as agricultural and industrial. And so we are in the midst of efforts to do just that, and to quantify our rights. And I hope that answers your question. Anything you guys want to add?
I think you did a good job.
Okay, thank you. All right, and then Clarence Hogue asked or made a good statement here, and I've been kind of thinking about it since he put it up. So Clarence says that along the San Juan River, that's in New Mexico, the non-native water users outside the reservation seem to get the irrigation water first every year. The Navajo farmers get their water at least 1 to 2 months later. Just wondering how priority user is determined. That is an interesting situation and question. We do have priority water rights along the San Juan River, the Navajo Nation. However, I'm not sure how exactly the irrigation uses are managed. And I think this might be a good question for us to ask our Department of Water Resources or our partners in New Mexico. I'm not exactly, again, our responsibility, the Water Rights Unit, is to secure and protect our Navajo water rights. We don't actually work out in the field on like irrigation matters and so forth. But that's a good question, and it's one that we can check with our Department of Water Resources or our partners in the state of New Mexico in regards to how this is being managed. All right, and then we have another comment from American Navajo Patriot. And he states the term special master is creepy. Okay. I kind of want to say no comment, but we definitely get what you're saying. Mac and Dwight, do you want to respond to that?
Well, you have one person that's essentially making decisions that's going to impact, generations, and so it's a difficult task, and certainly in the adjudication process, it's very adversarial. In a settlement negotiation process, certainly you get to communicate with the parties and convey what your needs and interests are, and try to negotiate and compromise to come up with an agreement that the parties can support, which is very different than the court adversarial system.
Yeah, and one thing that is concerning, I know for us as the ones who are handling these matters legally, is that, under the McCarran Amendment, the determination of our water rights falls to the state, and a special master is chosen by the state court judge to hear out the cases and to make recommendations as to what the result would be. And so a lot is put on not just the state, but the special master, as Dwight had described, to make these decisions. And it's not a federal court, it's not a tribal court, it's a state court. And it's usually, I have not heard of any Native special masters or anyone that's a tribally enrolled member who's been appointed as a special master. So a lot is put into the hands of this individual to make some very important decisions regarding our past, our present, and our future, and our claims to water. So I appreciate your noticing, the important role of this individual, and how serious these types of situations are, and the role of that individual. So I'm going to go on to the next one. We have Morgan Cheerios. That he talks about how hard it is to be optimistic when you're living in a situation where your community well runs out of water, dries up, and it's hard to determine what do you do when such a situation occurs. And I think, again, if something like that happens, my understanding is you can reach out to NTUA or to the Department of Water Resources. And on our end, pursuing our water rights claims, our hope, our goal is that there will be water running to all of our communities without so much interference in the near future, or in our future, so that the Navajo people can live without those worries or those frustrations. So do either of you want to comment on that as well?
There's also certainly the concept or idea of having multiple sources, so that if one source is impaired or limited, that you can use other sources as backups or emergencies to be able to help. And so creating a system that benefits the communities is important, and multiple tie-ins to multiple sources is important.
Yeah. And I know we have an emergency management department, and as well the Department of Water Resources may be working with them as well in those types of situations. So I would encourage you to also outreach to those departments on the Navajo Nation. Okay.
I was just going to say really quickly on that notion, that the Navajo leadership is aware, and they do want all the members to have access to water. And we see these pipelines, if you're driving around Window Rock and you see those pipelines being put in, those are attempts to address these issues, one of many attempts. And so it is disheartening when our members don't have access to water like we want. But the nation and the leadership is working hard for it. But thank you for that.
Thanks, Mac. Okay, Dwayne Sinigini. Can chapters such as Botaway Gap quantify their water rights claim as the chapter does lie along the Little Colorado River? I'll let one of you answer that. It's a test.
The chapter certainly can provide information that can be helpful in trying to assert information about, historical uses for irrigation, certainly the population, any uses that are past as well as present, and maybe plans that the chapter has for future water needs. The nation's engaged certainly in trying to obtain information and advocate for the quantification and the best outcome for the nation's needs in all the various areas and categories that are listed in the Hilo 5 court case that the nation can advocate for. And that's certainly domestic, commercial, municipal, industrial, that's stock ponds, agricultural, irrigation, unique cultural, fish, wildlife, conservation, and others. So absolutely, the chapter can try to provide information to help advocate for the quantification.
Yeah, and I'll follow up on that. So you saw earlier in the presentation the slide that involves all the chapters in the Little Colorado River adjudication. So all of the chapters that are within that area are included in the current efforts to quantify the water rights in the Little Colorado River for the Navajo Nation. But it's the Navajo Nation who oversees that effort for quantifying the nation's water rights. But like Dwight said, any information that can be provided is always helpful. We did just finish our phase 1 trial of the Little Colorado River adjudication. And if we do not reach a settlement, we are going to move on to phase 2, which begins in 2027. And that's of the Little Colorado adjudication. And it will, again, include information from those chapters that are fall within that area. So the last let me see, there are a few more questions, but we may have run out of time. You do have a mahalo from Keone. You can say that name, Mac.
I can say part of it, right? But I would love to hear it said correctly. But Kekapu.
Kekapuma kana.
Kamani, and then the last part is Kalani.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, aloha.
Okay. So, and then we have some thank yous from Jerry Begay. Appreciate you tuning in. And yes, we will continue to work on these efforts for brighter results. And we did talk about the issues that include the Hopi tribe, and we do want to, continue to work together for best outcomes for our tribes. And so thank you everyone for joining. I'm not able to go through all of the questions, but I really appreciate your interest. And again, we are going to have, we are going out to the different communities starting in January through February, both in New Mexico and in Arizona. So please, check our websites, the Navajo Department of Justice's website, the Water Rights Unit, also the President's website, and our Water Rights Commission. and also, look out on social media, our flyers, and we're also hoping to post our flyers out in the different communities that we'll be visiting. We want to be able to provide education on our current water rights efforts, including the settlement efforts that are currently happening in both New Mexico and in Arizona. So with that, thank you very much for tuning in. And I'm sure the AG will be back with more of these lunch and learns in the new year. So happy new year to all of you. And thank you. And thank you, Kevin, Mac, and Dwight, for all that you do to make these lunch and learns so great. Thank you.